I already had a beloved, but with the issuance of an imperial decree, I became the empress. The day before entering the palace, my beloved invited me out for a drink, saying he wanted to see me one last time. I drank the peach blossom wine he handed me, and immediately, blood flowed uncontrollably from my lower body. His once tender and affectionate face instantly filled with disgust and hatred. Do you really think I love you? Only when you can no longer bear children will my Urao become the most favored woman in the harem. The Urao he mentioned is the name of the current imperial consort. The wine was laced with a full dose of safflower, leaving me unable to conceive again and causing me to suffer from persistent bleeding. After entering the palace, the emperor discovered my hidden ailment and flew into a rage, immediately granting me a cup of poisoned wine and slaughtering my entire Shan family for the crime of deceiving the sovereign. Once again I opened my eyes, and I had returned to the day my beloved invited me for a drink. Hello, everyone, welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful stories every day. Now, the story begins. The young man before me had dashing, handsome features, with sharp brows and starry eyes, his sorrowful gaze fixed on me as he handed over that cup of peach blossom brew. Yunshu, this peach blossom brew, I brewed it especially for you. I had hoped to celebrate at our engagement banquet after my coming-of-age ceremony, but now it seems that once you enter the palace gates, it's as deep as the sea. There will be no chance after all. I was momentarily stunned. The concerned face before me overlapped with the one full of disgust in my memory, and I instantly felt a shiver of fear. And that cup of wine in his hand was nothing less than a death warrant for me and the entire Shan family. I fought back the nausea, covering my mouth and nose with a handkerchief, and spoke softly. Young Master Xie, since this wine was prepared for the engagement banquet, if it's missed, then it's missed. I am already the empress chosen by His Majesty. Young Master Xie, you should know to keep your distance. Then, I subtly signaled to Zizhu behind me with a glance, understanding my meaning. Zizhu quickly took my hand and led me away. Miss, it's all my fault. I forgot that the boxes to be taken into the palace still need you to check them personally. Please go and take a look quickly. I stood up and walked away directly, leaving him with a stunned expression. In my previous life, after being given the poisoned wine, I desperately kowtowed to the emperor, begging for mercy. The reason was simple. I wasn't afraid of death myself. But I only wished for the emperor to spare the hundreds of people in my Shan family. I banged my head against the wall, explaining over and over again. I said it was because I had eaten something wrong that my health had been ruined. But the emperor, seeing the bloodstains on my nightgown, was convinced that I had lost my purity before entering the palace, that my body was unclean. He was convinced that my father had sent me into the palace to humiliate him. The emperor said he detested the prime minister's control over him. He was the son of heaven. After all, when he was young, it was natural for his father to assist in governing the country. But now he was long capable of handling matters on his own. It was his father who had overstepped his authority. So, it turned out he had long held a grudge against my father, the prime minister. But if that's the case, why did you praise my father so highly in front of the court officials, saying, "The nation cannot go a single day without its prime minister"? Beside him, Shu Yueruo covered her mouth with a light laugh, adding fuel to the fire. I've heard that before Shen Yunshu entered the palace, she had a handsome sweetheart. As for what happened behind the scenes, Your Majesty, who can say for sure? Thus, amidst the emperor's fury and the imperial consort's mockery, my mouth was forcibly pried open by the palace attendants. A cup of poisoned wine was poured down my throat. The pain made my hairpins scatter in disarray, and my robes were soaked with sweat. In excruciating agony, I soon died. My aunt, the Empress Dowager, arrived a step too late. By the time she rushed to the scene, the emperor and the consort had long since departed. The palace attendants were dragging my corpse away, intending to discard it in the mass graves overnight. Her eyes filled with tears as she threw herself onto my corpse, wailing loudly, "Yunshu, how foolish you are. How could you and your father treat the royal family's dignity with such disrespect? Actions speak louder than intentions. No matter how deeply you loved your sweetheart, how could you commit such a foolish act as engaging in a secret affair?" Unfortunately, I was already dead by then and couldn't clear my name. My soul hovered before her, desperately pleading my case. "Aunt, Yunshu did not. after drinking Xie Yanji's wine that day, I bled uncontrollably, and he had long since disappeared. The physician treated me all night and said I would never be able to conceive again in this lifetime. The most concerning symptom was the continuous bleeding, but the physician said he could prescribe medicine to temporarily stop it, and I had to enter the palace early the next morning. My parents truly had no other choice, or it would have been the grave crime of defying the imperial decree. We had planned to inform the emperor later that my body was too damaged to bear children. A cup of tea from the palace made before serving the bed directly caused me to bleed uncontrollably again, which finally aroused the emperor's suspicion. But no matter how I explained, my aunt refused to listen. My spirit drifted through the palace, and a few days later, the emperor used this incident to make a big issue out of it. He claimed that the empress lacked virtue and was unfit to be a model for the nation. The Shen family deliberately intended to humiliate the imperial family. An act of great treason. With the issuance of an imperial decree, not a single one of the hundreds in the Shen family was spared, and the ground was soaked in blood. At this moment, I sat in the sedan chair on my way back to the residence, the embroidered handkerchief in my hand nearly torn to shreds. I knew all too well that since I had enjoyed the glory of the Shen clan, I must bear the price it brought. In my previous life, I never wanted to see Xie Yanji again, seeing him beg me so humbly. I didn't want to break his heart. Xie Yanji treated me exceptionally well. He was the perfect husband in my heart. That day, he poured me a cup of peach blossom wine he had brewed himself and fed it to me. In his anticipation, I thought, drinking this cup of wine would be like severing all ties with him. But as soon as I drank it, his expression changed. The deep affection from moments ago vanished in an instant, replaced by a gaze full of cruelty and heartlessness. Seeing me clutch my abdomen in agony, he laughed heartily and revealed the truth. I was good to you before because I had long heard that the late emperor secretly left an edict, stating that upon your coming of age, you would be made empress. Originally, I thought if you fell in love with me and had my child, you would surely be unable to enter the palace, but in that case, my Duke Dinggua's residence would inevitably be implicated. It's better to ruin you like this. To make the emperor despise you, so that the one I love most can forever enjoy that supreme honor. You're crying like this. Don't tell me you actually thought I loved you. No matter who becomes empress, I would find a way to ruin her, unless my Urao is the one sitting on the empress's throne. See how much I love my Urao. For her happiness, I can clear all obstacles for her. I was already in too much pain to speak. He left me with a pale blue silhouette, walking away with ease. He left. But he left me with a dead end, casually ruining my entire life. A gentle breeze rose, and the scent of Osman thus wafted from outside the sedan curtain, refreshing the heart and mind. My eyes were filled with a coldness that seemed bottomless. Xie Yanji, for the sake of your true love Shu Yuran, you not only harmed me but also brought ruin to my entire Shen family. Between you and me lies a sea of blood and hatred, separated by hundreds of corpses, in this lifetime. Do you still wish to remain unscathed, to let your beloved white moonlight bask in imperial favor and enjoy unparalleled honor and glory? Unfortunately, you are destined to be disappointed. The next day, I rode the magnificent empress's carriage and entered the main gate of the imperial palace in a grand procession. Under the gaze of the entire palace, I, dressed in an exceedingly luxurious bright yellow court attire, walked step by step toward the emperor and received the empress's seal of authority from his hands. As the legitimate daughter of the prime minister, my every move was dignified and proper, without a single flaw to be found. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw noble consort Shu Yaroreo below the platform staring at me intently. Her beautiful phoenix eyes were slightly upturned, not concealing her hostility toward me in the slightest. Shu Yaroreo possessed a stunning beauty, with a pair of enchanting, amorous eyes as tender as water, truly captivating enough to topple cities and kingdoms. Unlike the consort's bold and flamboyant allure, my beauty was one of pure elegance, with skin like jade and congealed cream, resembling a lotus emerging from the water. At just 15, I had bright eyes and white teeth. In the prime of my youth, I smiled faintly, my red lips curling slightly. I know my own beauty. No wonder consort Shu Yaroreo was worried. And Xie Yanji was the blade she had long prepared in her scheme. In my previous life, The emperor was wary of my father's position as prime minister, so his humiliation of me was a pretense. His true intention was to use it as an excuse to eliminate the entire Shen family. During the reign of the previous emperor, in gratitude for all my father had done for him, he specially appointed my father as prime minister. Half of the peace and prosperity of the Song family's empire was the result of my father's painstaking efforts. The late emperor, to preserve the honor of the Shen family, left a special decree appointing me as the empress to his son. Even if I had been unharmed at the time, he would have found other reasons to eliminate the Shen family. However, I will no longer give the emperor this opportunity. Last night, I had a long talk with my father by candlelight, and he has decided to resign from his official post and return to his hometown. Compared to life, wealth and honor are not the most important. I sat in the brilliantly lit Phoenix Roost Palace, waiting for the emperor to arrive. However, I wasn't sure how long he would stay. In my previous life, before entering the palace, the instructing auntie had said that the noble consort was the most favored consort in the palace, bound by the late emperor's decree. The emperor had no choice but to make me his empress, yet the entire palace whispers that the emperor's true wife is none other than noble consort Xu Yuran. She is the emperor's childhood sweetheart. Her aunt was the former consort Rong, now the dowager consort Rong. Consort Rong had previously lost her child, leaving her heart heavy with sorrow. To bring a smile to consort Rong's face, the late emperor specially ordered her niece, Xu Yuerao, to enter the palace to keep her company. Xu Yuerao's background was somewhat complicated. Her mother had been arranged by the late emperor to marry into the northern tribes, which led to Xu Yuerao's birth. Xu Yuerao carried the bloodline of the northern Khan. Later, the Khan of the northern frontier accidentally fell from his horse and passed away. With the intercession of consort Rong at the time, the late emperor brought the mother and daughter back to the palace. The emperor's birth mother was a deposed consort who later died in the cold palace. The emperor was not favored in his childhood and suffered harsh treatment from the palace servants, sometimes even being served spoiled food. Xu Yuran grew up in the desert, with a fierce, straightforward temperament and a strong will. While in the palace, she once came across several nannies bullying the young prince and immediately stepped in to help the emperor out of the situation, with Xu Yuran's assistance. His life in the palace became much better than before. Over time, she fell in love with this stubborn young man, and the emperor, he fell in love with this sunlit woman. She was the beam of light in his dust-covered heart. But alas, no matter how perfect the beginning, who can guarantee the ending? I sighed and straightened my slightly bent back. The weight of the pearl-studded headdress and phoenix crown made my shoulders ache, yet I tried my best to maintain the most dignified posture. Zizhu immediately stepped forward and asked if I would wait for the emperor to arrive. I let out a light laugh, unfazed. Wait, of course I would wait. I don't believe he would dare to refuse the empress's dignity by being absent even on the night of their grand imperial wedding. He will definitely come, sure enough. Moments later, a figure in bright yellow lifted my bridal veil. Under the flickering candlelight, I revealed a shy smile, my delicate eyebrows arching gracefully, making me appear even more charming and lovely. Without his father's suppression, he showed a bit more favor towards me. After drinking the wedding wine, he sat on the bed piled with festive quilts, and we faced each other in silence. But the next moment, before I could speak to ease the awkwardness, Xu Yuerao's chief palace maid hurriedly came to report, saying the imperial consort had gotten drunk and accidentally sprained her ankle, begging the emperor to come see. Upon hearing this, the emperor dashed out of the palace gate as if flying, leaving me only with his receding figure, and me alone sitting on the bed. Zizhu instantly stood up for me, but I didn't care at all. The decades-long bond between Xu Yuran and the emperor naturally holds an extraordinary place in his heart. To bring her down would by no means be the work of a single day, so why should I dwell on a moment of disappointment? Thinking that the Shen family was now safe, my heart was at ease. I then had Zizhu extinguish the candles and slept soundly through the night. The next day, all the imperial consorts came to my Fengqi palace to pay their respects. They were all daughters of officials sent by the Empress Dowager to the imperial harem, but unfortunately, they rarely got to see the emperor even once in a year or two. I took a moment to recognize each of their faces, then had my maids reward them with generous gifts. However, the seat reserved for noble consort Shu Yuo remained empty. Noble consort Xiao, who was beside me, expressed her indignation on my behalf. It's one thing for the consort to be arrogant on ordinary days, but to be this late today in the presence of Her Majesty the Empress shows she has no regard for the central palace. I smiled faintly and told her not to worry, as justice lies in the hearts of the people. After that, I drank several rounds of tea with them, but there was still no sign of consort Shu Yuo coming to pay her respects. Seeing the concubines begin to whisper among themselves, I directly dismissed them to kneel in farewell and return to their palaces to rest. I did it on purpose, of course. The more arrogant and domineering consort Shu Yuo became, the more I had to remain dignified and sensible. She could recklessly seek the emperor's affection. Alas, the imperial family is the most heartless of all. The emperor's love can bring you immense glory in one moment, and cost you your head the next. Therefore, what I seek is always the most reliable power. Only power is eternal. It wasn't long before rumors spread in the palace that the imperial consort, emboldened by favor, had grown arrogant, even skipping important events like paying respects to the empress. After hearing this, the empress dowager even had her senior maid come to see me, and bestowed upon me various treasured gifts like Eastern pearls, gold, jade, and phoenix hairpins to soothe the grievances the imperial consort had caused me. Even as the empress, I still bowed respectfully to the senior maid who had served the empress dowager for decades. Of course, this show of respect was for the eyes of my aunt, the empress dowager. What is love, if you can make someone's heart ache for you? That is the highest form of open strategy. Sure enough, after the empress dowager's intervention, the emperor came to dine with me just a few days later. He explained to me that he had heard the imperial consort had sprained her ankle that night, which had flustered him and caused him to leave me waiting all evening. I shook my head to indicate it didn't matter, gently placed a piece of chestnut chicken in his bowl, then looked at him with a radiant smile. I clearly saw him momentarily lose his composure, a flicker of admiration in his eyes. This is only natural. After being reborn, I practiced this smile countless times. When the emperor was not around, I would often face the bronze mirror, finding the best angle to practice the most enchanting smile, and today, I am dressed in simple, everyday clothes, making me appear even more pure and adorable, evoking a sense of tenderness. They say spring rain moistens all things silently, and a person's heart will eventually surrender under the relentless infiltration of details. Of course, I'm in no hurry. After all, someone will be more anxious than I am. Sure enough, before the evening meal was even finished, the noble consort suddenly suffered another bout of heart palpitations. Her chief maid knelt on the ground, pleading with the emperor to visit the noble consort with tears and a runny nose. Yet there was not a hint of remorse in her eyes. After all, both she and the consort knew that the emperor would surely abandon me to see his beloved consort. The emperor looked at me, a flicker of guilt flashing in his eyes, and he tightly grasped my hand. I picked up a handkerchief and gently wiped the corner of his mouth, saying softly, "Her Highness the consort is unwell. Your Majesty should go and see her quickly." The emperor did not expect me to be so considerate, and he actually seemed a bit embarrassed. His gaze held a touch more approval as he looked at me. Then he patted my shoulder and followed the senior palace maid as she left. Before he departed, I draped the heavy cloak over him, saying the wind was strong outside and I was worried he might catch a chill. I stood very close to him while putting on the cloak, and my delicate hand accidentally brushed against his firm chest, causing my ears to instantly turn red. I quickly lowered my head, pretending not to dare to look at him. But I knew he was watching me. I could feel his gaze growing increasingly intense. Then I urged him to hurry and not keep the imperial consort waiting. As he left, he suddenly turned back and gave me a meaningful glance. "See, the fish has taken the bait." The emperor went to consort Shu Yarao's palace and did not come to the Phoenix Roost Palace for nearly half a month, and consort Shu Yarao never came to pay her respects either. When the other consorts came to pay their respects, their eyes held sympathy, pity, and emotion when they looked at me. Naturally, there were also those who were there to mock me. I was just cracking sunflower seeds with them, chatting about everyday life, and in my leisure time, admiring flowers together. Gazing at the vibrant blooms in full splendor in the imperial garden, I softly recited a line of poetry. Flowers do not bloom for 100 days. If even flowers are like this, how much more so are people? Yet my calm and detached attitude, in turn, earned me the Empress Dowager's great admiration. In her heart, I was not only her niece but also a queen who seldom felt jealousy. And I could even get along well with all the concubines. Faced with the tough-talking noble consort, I never held a grudge against her. When I heard she had heart palpitations, I even sent the imperial physician to check on her several times, even though the entire harem knew she was faking it. Thus, the Empress Dowager, my aunt, grew even fonder of me. A few days ago, when I went to her palace to pay my respects, she held my hand tightly and repeatedly praised the late emperor for his foresight. Tonight, when the emperor's carriage passed by the Phoenix Roost Palace, he saw many sparkling fireflies. The fireflies flickered in the pitch-black night, shining as brightly as stars. Hearing the sound of the zither inside, the emperor gently pushed open the door of the Phoenix Roost Palace. Before my eyes is the scene of purple bamboo accompanying me, while I, clad in light gauze, dance along with the fireflies. I am dressed in a flowing, moon-white gauze, with my hair styled like the immortal maiden in the painting, holding a green lotus in my hand, dancing gracefully under the moonlight, resembling the fairy Chang'e. The emperor was mesmerized. He stared at me intently. Although I had noticed his presence early on, I pretended not to see him, completely lost in my dance. The dance lowers the moon over the willow-lined tower. The song exhausts the breeze beneath the peach blossom fan. As the dance ended, he clapped his hands, praising me repeatedly, but I, like a startled bird, instantly reverted to my previous fragile and pitiable state. Flustered as I bowed in salute, my full head of hairpins happened to come loose at that moment, and my dark tresses cascaded over my shoulders, accentuating my fair and delicate skin. He quickly walked to my side and picked me up in his arms, smelling the lily fragrance on me. His gaze grew even more intense. Then, he closed the palace door, and the attendants tactfully withdrew. Empress, I owe you a wedding night. The crabapple blossoms are most enchanting when first touched by rain. A few delicate blooms, so graceful, seem about to speak. The emperor seemed somewhat repressed, wildly and recklessly taking his fill on me. I held him tightly without saying a word. After it was over, he embraced me, playing with the strands of dark hair on my shoulder, twining them around his fingertips. I looked up at him with deer-like, moist eyes. Innocent as a child, in that instant, I saw a flicker of heartache in his gaze. The next moment, he swiftly rose from the bed. Understanding his intention, I quickly helped him into his bright yellow robe and tidied his slightly disheveled hair. Seeing my calm expression, his departing figure paused for a moment. Empress, I promised the noble consort to visit her palace. Before he could finish, I feigned shyness, quickly pecked his cheek, and then revealed a gentle smile. Your Majesty is the wise ruler of the realm, and all the people of the land are your Majesty's subjects. As the Empress, I understand even more the principles of assisting your Majesty. Ensuring the stability of the inner palace is my duty, and I dare not forget my responsibilities. Then I tightly held his hand, and under the flickering candlelight, I looked even more beautiful, like a fairy in a painting. Your Majesty, in my presence, you may always do as you wish. I will always listen to your Majesty. There is no need for concern. Please go see the noble consort. Seeing how understanding I was, the emperor showed a trace of emotion on his face, then promptly left the Phoenix Roost Palace. No matter how beautiful a flower is, seeing it every day will eventually lead to boredom. After a while, the flamboyant peony becomes less interesting than the pure and lovely white orchid. The emperor visited my palace with increasing frequency, and each time, I could envelop his hidden anger with my trembling tenderness. When he came, there was often a trace of bitterness on his face, yet every time he left, it was filled with satisfaction and delight. You see, to win a man's heart, tenderness is always the ultimate weapon. How else can it be said that a gentle blade cuts deepest, each strike taking a life? The imperial consort gradually noticed that the emperor was becoming increasingly unable to keep up with her in the intimacy of the bedchamber. Indeed, though the emperor never stayed the night when he visited me, I always had a way to leave him utterly exhausted. As clever as the imperial consort was, how could she not see the signs? Having never looked at the records of the imperial household department, She ordered the archives to be brought directly and examined them herself. Seeing the name Shen Yunshu written repeatedly, she became furious. With her fiery temper, how could she possibly hide her displeasure? Soon, it was heard that during lunch with the emperor and the noble consort, the two first argued, then had a heated quarrel. Zizhu reported to me with a face full of joy. She said that the palace maids were quietly spreading the word. This was the first time the emperor had argued with the consort, and the first time he had failed to appease her, leaving her Weiyang palace in a huff. Looking at Zizhu's beaming face, I simply smiled faintly and then asked her to light the storax incense for me. This incense was the emperor's favorite, and every time it was lit, I would place a few slices of pear on top. Soon, the fragrance of pears filled the room, a clear and slightly sweet aroma that permeated the entire Phoenix Roost Palace. If nothing unexpected happened, the emperor would arrive very soon. However, before the emperor arrived, the imperial consort came first. Her palace attendants rudely pushed open the doors of the Phoenix Roost Palace while I was in the middle of doing my makeup. Long strands of hair cascaded to the floor, the small lattice window half open and half closed, as a gentle breeze swept through, lifting a few locks to dance lightly in the wind. I wore a long gauze dress the color of moonlight, barefoot, beautiful as a painting. She looked at me, her eyes filled with jealousy and anger, her hands trembling slightly. I didn't ask her to bow, but simply walked barefoot past her, then prepared the lychees that the emperor loves. I gently picked up each plump lychee, and after peeling it, the round, crystal-clear flesh was truly delightful. But the next moment, a plate of freshly peeled lychees was pushed to the ground, scattering everywhere. I panicked instantly, my heart aching, and knelt on the ground to pick them up one by one, a dignified empress, kneeling to pick up lychees. Of course, I did it on purpose. The palace maids beside me were already restrained by the consort's attendants. They lowered their heads, not daring to watch me make a fool of myself. I knelt barefoot on the ground, my outer robe slipping off just enough to reveal my delicate collarbones and the unspeakable bruises on my neck. Xu Yuran saw it and was instantly enraged. She stepped forward directly, gripping my neck, her eyes bloodshot. I just looked at her, terrified and weeping, not saying a word. Instead, she laughed in anger. Seeing me cower, she grew even more ruthless. Stop pretending. I despise such hypocritical little vixens like you. What's with this act of innocence just to win the emperor's favor? What does being the empress matter? You're nothing but a fleeting novelty to him, he once said. To become like Mandarin ducks, I'd not regret death. To be his companion, I'd envy no immortal. He also swore that in this lifetime, he would love only me. Let's see who can protect you today, now that Song Huijin isn't here. Immediately after, a slap landed directly on my face, leaving 5 glaring finger marks on my fair skin. All the palace attendants were shocked, not daring to breathe. Barging into the empress's central palace was one thing, but to actually strike her, this was no longer just arrogance and audacity. It was a crime punishable by the extermination of one's entire clan. The next second, another slap was about to land, and I tightly shut my eyes, calculating the time in her mind. Almost there, just a little longer. Sure enough, a pair of hands stopped her, a bright yellow figure before her tightly gripped her wrist, his face clearly showing 7 parts of anger. Noble consort, she is my empress. How dare you overstep your bounds like this? The noble consort glared at the emperor. Yet she saw him firmly protecting me. Suddenly, a tear fell, and I slowly gave in. She let go of her hand, turned around as if wilted, the vigor she had when she first arrived suddenly gone. The emperor looked at me, anxiously holding my face, asking if I was all right. I threw myself into his arms, my large teardrops landing on his face, and I bit my lower lip hard. Finally, I grabbed the hem of his robe, my voice soft and tearful, tenderly calling him Brother Song. Sure enough, I felt a sudden tremor in a certain part of his body, and in his eyes, the initial tenderness was now mixed with a hint of desire. When the imperial consort heard me call the emperor Brother Song, her recently calmed emotions flared up again in an instant. She recklessly smashed all the jewels and jade in my palace, and the masterpieces of calligraphy and painting that the emperor had painstakingly sought for me were torn to shreds by her in just a few moments. Before the emperor and the others could react, she left behind the words, Song Huijin, you can only be mine, and stormed out of Fengchi Palace. As for me, holding a plate of lychees I had picked up from the floor, I knelt barefoot at his feet, my heart aching so much that tears fell. Brother Song, it's all Yunshu's fault for being so incompetent that I couldn't even protect the lychees you love the most. He sighed, patted my head, then lifted me into his arms and said helplessly, "You silly little fool, you truly make my heart ache. You are the dignified empress of the Central Palace. How could you let a mere consort strike you? If I weren't here, would you just endure such a great injustice in silence?" I looked at him, burying my face tightly against his chest, then said timidly, "Yunshu only knows that sister is the one in Brother Song's heart, so no matter how wronged I feel, I don't want to make things difficult for him. Brother Song, please don't take it out on sister because of this, okay? I know, all he wants is everyone's submission, even the radiant imperial consort, who was once the light in his heart, but now he is the emperor of this land, and he will never allow a woman to challenge him." Sure enough, his eyes softened, and the way he looked at me was as gentle as a pool of water. When will the imperial consort ever be as sensible as Yunshu? He laid me on the bed, touched my swollen cheek, and held me tightly. Then he pulled down the beaded curtain in one swift motion, pressing an impassioned kiss to my lips. "Yunshu, will you bear a child for me?" Of course, I would not bear a child for him. On the night I entered the palace, I drank a contraceptive potion, ensuring I would not conceive for 3 years. However, there were plenty of others in the palace eager to bear children. This was the first time he spent the night in my quarters, and from then on, he grew even more brazen. Staying in my palace without restraint, every month I have a few days of discomfort, and upon my recommendation, the emperor visited several other palace consorts. The noble consort was confined to her quarters for a month. However, the noble consort's flute playing is truly exceptional. How could it go to waste? A few days later, as the emperor passed by, the noble consort effortlessly captured his heart with just one melody, everlasting longing. The emperor pushed open the gate of Weiyang Palace and never came out that day, staying at the consort's residence for 7 consecutive nights. Zizhu told me this while I was practicing calligraphy. On the large and small sheets of Xian paper, there was only one character: stillness. Beside me were various history books, half-read. When the emperor was away, I brewed tea and practiced calligraphy, feeling quite joyful and carefree on my own. I also often visited my aunt, the Empress Dowager, in her palace, but that didn't mean I was oblivious to the world outside. The secret letter from outside the palace arrived just as I finished reading that line from the Book of Documents. The human mind is precarious, the moral mind is subtle. Remain refined and single-minded, and hold fast to the mean. I had just tossed the secret letter into the brazier, watching it turn to ashes, when consort Shu Yurang arrived with the emperor and other concubines. The moment the consort saw me, her sharp voice echoed through the entire bedchamber. "Queen Shen Yunshu, how dare you seduce the son of the Duke of Dingwa, attempting to have an illicit affair and defile the imperial harem?" I watched her hysterical outburst and couldn't help but frown. Before I could even decide how to deal with Xie Yanji, he had already lost his composure, or perhaps, for the first time, the noble consort was truly afraid. She was so afraid that someone might truly steal the emperor's favor. So she grew desperate enough to sacrifice even Xie Yanji, who loved her most, just to get rid of me. I smiled faintly, tilting my head, and looked playfully at the emperor. "Brother Song, what is the consort saying? Why can't Yunshu understand? Who does Yunshu love most in her heart? Doesn't Brother Song know?" Song Huijin's eyes darkened, as if he wanted to say something, but he was quickly interrupted by the quick-tongued Shu Yurio. "A queen, so shameless, actually plans to secretly meet with an old flame. If it weren't for the second son of the Duke of Dingwa's family being loyal and devoted, wouldn't you have turned the entire imperial harem upside down by yourself? Your Majesty, I, Shu Yuran, may have a willful and indulgent nature, but my heart for you is as clear as the heavens and earth can testify. Unlike some people, who appear pure and innocent on the surface but secretly seduce your Majesty's ministers, bewitching and shameless." Zizhu was so anxious that her face turned bright red, wanting to speak up for me, but I signaled for her to step back. I put down the book I had just finished reading, walked gently to the emperor's side, and respectfully bowed. Then, looking directly at the consort, she asked bluntly, "Consort, I respect you and call you sister because you entered the palace early and have served His Majesty for so long, but with all this talk of seduction and secret affairs, sister. Those who don't know better might think this isn't the imperial harem but some disreputable pleasure house. Sister, since you claim I've been involved in an illicit affair with an outsider, where is your evidence?" Shu Yueruo's eyes showed a hint of pride. Then she had a servant present a letter. It was written by Xie Yanji himself, saying that just yesterday he had entered the palace to see the emperor, and I immediately sent someone to invite him to meet and reminisce at the lake island. Upon hearing this, he was so frightened that he lost his nerve and hurriedly reported it to the emperor. I looked at this letter and laughed uncontrollably, as if I had seen the biggest joke in the world. The imperial consort frowned, as if looking at a fool. Then, she clapped her hands impatiently, and an unfamiliar young palace maid hurriedly knelt down, crying out in protest, "Your Majesty, Your Highness, I know nothing." That day, seeing the Empress troubled and distressed, I was only following orders to seek out Xie Yanji. Her Majesty also instructed me to deliver her personal handkerchief to him. Upon hearing this, Emperor Song Huijin showed a hint of anger on his face, and his gaze toward me became more probing. I looked at this palace maid and immediately turned to the emperor, kneeling and refusing to rise. "Your Majesty, this palace maid has only recently arrived at Fengqi Palace. I have not seen her often, and according to Zizhu, she previously served Lady Ling, who is the biological cousin of the noble consort. This matter concerns my reputation, so I naturally must investigate it thoroughly. I implore Your Majesty to conduct a thorough search of this little maid's room. Surely, some clues will be found to prove my innocence." At this moment, I knelt on the ground. My hair slightly disheveled, tears silently fell, my eyes like pools of autumn water, my whole being like a small flower battered by waves, desperately in need of something to cling to. The emperor, seeing me in this state, instantly showed a hint of softness in his eyes. I knew he loved this feeling of being relied upon too much. This made him, who was accustomed to being in a superior position, feel quite pleased. Indeed, he was an emperor, but first and foremost, he was a man. A man who needed the admiration of women. At that moment, the Empress Dowager hurried over and, seeing me kneeling, directly pulled me to my feet. She looked at the emperor, her words full of complaints, saying that I've been going to her palace every day lately to practice calligraphy and read books. Wishing I could just live in the Empress Dowager's palace, how could I possibly have time to secretly meet with a man? Soon after, several palace servants found several letters and several hundred taels of silver in the young maid's room. The letters detailed how to frame me by stealing my handkerchief and delivering it to Xie Yanji, and at the bottom of those few hundred taels of silver, the character Shu was engraved in small print. This was official silver from the Shu residence. Upon seeing this, the young palace maid immediately looked at me in disbelief. She then quickly knelt on the ground, clutching the garments of consort Shu Yueruo, begging her to save her. Only then did a flicker of panic appear in the noble consort's eyes. The next moment, she stared fixedly at me, a complex mix of emotions surfacing on her face, and slowly spoke, "Your Majesty, since this matter requires caution, why not summon Xie Yanji to have a proper conversation with Her Majesty the Empress? That way, whether there is any improper relationship between the two will be clear at a glance." The Emperor still approved. Xie Yanji soon arrived at Fengqi Palace. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a faint coldness, even a hint of murderous intent lurking beneath. I calmly sat in my seat, slowly taking a sip of tea. He knelt on the ground and refused to rise, saying that we had been childhood sweethearts. But after he learned I was to enter the palace, he severed his feelings for me. Yet I, on the other hand, often subtly continued to tempt him. Even this time he entered the palace, I still wanted to rekindle our past relationship. He knew he was guilty, but even at the cost of his life, he would defend the emperor's reputation to the death. I watched his performance with a barely noticeable, faint smile at the corner of my mouth. I had originally planned to deal with Xie Yanji properly after the imperial consort stepped down, but since he was in such a hurry to meet his end, I had no choice but to grant his wish. I glanced at him, my eyes filled with contempt. For the sake of the woman he loves, I am to become a living sacrifice. This is unfair. it's extremely unfair. So, I feigned panic and exclaimed, is it the Xie family's tradition to slander others without cause? Just because my father resigned from his post, does that mean the Shen family can be bullied at will? I have never been childhood sweethearts with Lord Xie, so how could there be any talk of innocent affection? However, I do know that the one who truly holds Lord Xie's heart is not me, but someone else. After these words were spoken, both the imperial consort and Xie Yanji present showed unusual expressions on their faces. I had long known the most hidden affair in Xie Yanji's heart. Naturally, this was something Xie Yanji himself confessed to me in my previous life. When he forced me to drink the safflower, seeing the two of them slightly flustered, I felt a surge of satisfaction inside. It was time to make this fire burn even brighter. Seeing young Master Xie today reminds me of the rumors from before. I heard that the only true love in young Master Xie's heart is none other than Her Majesty the Imperial Consort. You're lying. The Imperial Consort and Xie Yanji spoke in unison, saying the same thing. Xie Yanji even rushed up to me, barely containing the fury in his eyes, as if he wished he could devour me whole, but my light-hearted remark that followed directly sentenced him to death. If your Majesty does not believe it, simply remove Xie Yanji's upper garment, and the truth will be revealed at once. I have heard that on Xie Yanji's chest is tattooed the name of his most beloved person. Upon hearing this, Xie Yanji looked up in disbelief, his eyes filled with terror. The next second, the emperor strode up to him, staring at him intently. His expression was dark and terrifying as he nodded to the palace attendant. The attendant restrained Xie Yanji, who was desperately resisting, and removed his upper garment. At this moment, Imperial Consort Xu Yuran still did not know what she was about to face, her expression showing a hint of tension and confusion. When Xie Yanji's chest was exposed before the emperor froze. The Imperial Consort spat out the tea in her mouth directly. Then, the look in her eyes as she gazed at Xie Yanji was filled with undisguised murderous intent, because on his chest, there were 4 characters tattooed. My wife, Royue. Royue was Xu Yuerao's childhood name. The emperor's face was dark and somber. I quickly knelt down, and the palace attendants immediately followed suit, kneeling as well. The emperor picked up a dagger from nearby and walked unhurriedly toward the imperial consort. The consort, now panicked, knelt directly at the emperor's feet. She claimed that it was Xie Yang who was audaciously lustful, that he had dared to covet her, and that he was guilty beyond forgiveness. The emperor lifted the consort's face, gently stroking it, but the affection that once filled his eyes was gone. He threw down the dagger, his words dripping with coldness. Kill him, and I will believe in your innocence. The entire hall fell into dead silence, only the sound of everyone's suppressed breathing. Xu Yueruo trembled as she picked up the dagger and slowly walked toward Xie Yanji. Xie Yanji looked at Xu Yueruo before him, a faint smile appearing on his face. He closed his eyes and said gently, "Do it." Xu Yueruo hesitated for a moment, then raised her sleeve high and plunged a dagger fiercely into Xie Yanji's body. Xie Yanji fell to the ground with a thud, and Xu Yueruo was so frightened that she collapsed on the floor. The next moment, Xie Yanji's body was carried out by the palace attendants, and the bloodstains on the floor were quickly cleaned away. It was as clean as if nothing had ever happened. Yes, after I died in my previous life, my spirit once saw Xie Yanji and Xu Yuo celebrating with wine. To express his love for Xu Yuerao, he tore open his chest to show her those few small characters. Xu Yuerao was so frightened on the spot that her face turned pale, and she urged him to remove it immediately. I've long planned to use this tattoo to set a trap, inviting you into the snare. Xie Yanji, oh Xie Yanji, what you love the most will one day be your downfall. I coughed lightly, and Zizhu behind me quietly slipped away unnoticed. The emperor approached, gently helping me up, his face full of apology. Yunshu, I have wronged you. I rushed straight into the emperor's embrace, tears streaming down my face. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught sight of the distraught Xu Yuerao, and a faint smile touched my lips before I spoke softly. Your Majesty is a wise ruler, and I know you will clear my name of this injustice, so I am not wronged. Seeing the intimacy between the emperor and me, the noble consort's face instantly darkened. Suddenly, I felt she was like a withered flower. Outwardly, it might still appear radiant, but inside, it had long since rotted away. the imperial consort was once again placed under house arrest, only this time, it wasn't for a month. But forbidden to leave without an imperial decree, the emperor stayed in my palace every night, and I lit the storax incense daily, which he greatly enjoyed. I removed his crown for him and massaged the acupoints on his head. Every time at this moment, he would hold my hand with a satisfied look on his face. It's always so comfortable here with the Empress. Every time I stay here, even without saying a word to you, I feel at peace. You make me feel happy. What a dog of a man. You've said the same thing to Shu Yuran, haven't you, 100 times, or 1,000, unfortunately, you can't fool me. But in my palace, it's naturally a joyful place. From now on, I'm afraid I'll make you even happier. Just 2 months later, right after the morning court session, the emperor hurriedly went to the consort's quarters once again. Shu Yuero was with child. The news reached me as I was copying Buddhist scriptures for the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager said that I resembled her greatly, especially in temperament. It was as if we were cut from the same cloth. After hearing the news of Shu Yueran's pregnancy, the Empress Dowager asked for my opinion. I didn't speak, but instead wrote a few lines on paper. In ancient times, those skilled in warfare first made themselves invincible, then waited for the enemy to become vulnerable. Upon seeing it, she nodded approvingly and remarked that despite being only in my teens, I was as mature as an old woman like her. She said that after her sister married my father, he endured many hardships for the sake of the court and the people. She had thought that her adopted son, now the emperor, would be a good ruler. But she once had a dream in which the emperor killed her sister and the entire Shen family, and she herself was suspected by the emperor, who eventually gave her poisoned wine, and she died on a winter day. The Empress Dowager tightly held my hand. Her eyes filled with compassion. The next second, she shook her head again, saying it wasn't enough, and then added a few large characters. Opportunity knocks but once. Looking at her calm eyes, I knew it was time. After casting the net for so long, it's time to catch the fish. The imperial consort's child was not saved. The imperial physicians said it was due to pent-up frustration, causing an unstable pulse and making a miscarriage highly likely. By the time the emperor, the Empress Dowager, and I hurriedly arrived, the medicinal soup had already spilled all over the floor. Shu Yueruo, dressed in her undergarments with her hair disheveled, threw herself into the emperor's arms, weeping as if her heart were breaking. Yes, she had accompanied the emperor into the palace for several years, receiving his favor the most, yet she had never borne a child. This was her greatest sorrow, and now that she had finally conceived, she was extremely cautious. Every day, her food, clothing, lodging, and movements were checked and rechecked, leaving no room for error. But how could this child be gone? Her face filled with grief, her eyes suddenly darted toward me, then she lunged at me with a ferocious expression. It's all you, Shen Yunshu. You must have done something, otherwise, my child would have been fine. It's all you. It's all you. Seeing this, the emperor quickly held her back, pulling her into his embrace. His face was full of sorrow as he comforted her, saying, Yuereo, don't cry. We will surely have another child. I promise you, I will give you another child. All right. Upon hearing this, I immediately covered the corner of my mouth with my handkerchief. 1 second later, and I feared I would burst out laughing. Men are truly ridiculous. They lie without batting an eye. Sweet-talking people with such smoothness. Shu Yue, don't be foolish. You will never have children. The emperor consoled Shu Yue for a long time, and she only fell asleep slowly after crying herself to exhaustion. I stepped forward, touched the emperor's hand, and signaled for him to stay with the imperial consort, then helped the Empress Dowager leave. A few nights later, the emperor was once again angered while at Shu Yueruo's place. It was said that the jade pendant he had given her as a token of love was nearly smashed by him in his fury. The emperor then came to my quarters, but I pretended to be asleep. So he ended up staying at the Hall of Mental Cultivation. After the emperor left, I quietly draped a cloak over my shoulders and, under the cover of night, made my way to Shu Yueruo's Weiyang Palace. This place is indeed resplendent and magnificent, especially after her miscarriage. The emperor, feeling sorry for her, bestowed upon her various rare and precious treasures. She lay on the bed, having lost a lot of weight, no longer possessing the overbearing demeanor she once had. Seeing me approach, She quickly struggled to sit up and called for her palace maid. I gently sat down on a chair and said that the Empress Dowager has been practicing Buddhism recently, and the dust in the Buddhist hall needs to be cleaned. Her palace attendants had all been sent away and wouldn't be back for a while. She snorted coldly, then put on that haughty expression as if I were her maid. I chuckled softly and got straight to the point. Xie Yanji is dead. Are you sad? She was stunned, never expecting me to bring up Xie Yanji. But the next second, she rolled her eyes at me, and a voice feigning strength came through. A mere young master from a noble family, daring to harbor thoughts about the emperor's favorite consort, he deserved to die. It was his own fault for developing feelings he shouldn't have. From beginning to end, he was nothing but my puppet. I made him do whatever I wanted. Such a useful blade. Wouldn't it be a waste not to use it? I touched the pearls and jade on her head and spotted a phoenix hairpin that I liked. This nine-tailed phoenix hairpin was exceptionally gorgeous, and I was quite delighted. The next second, I directly pulled it out and inserted it into my own hair bun. What a pity. If Xie Yanji knew from beyond the grave that the woman he loved his whole life not only killed him with her own hands but also slandered him like this after his death, I wonder what he would think. In that case, I actually feel it wasn't worth it for him. But today, I'm not here to talk about Xie Yanji. I picked up the bronze mirror beside me, admiring the phoenix hairpin, clicking my tongue in admiration, feeling quite delighted, indeed. A fine hairpin deserves to be paired with a beauty, don't you think, sister? Without waiting for Shu Yarou to respond, I went ahead and spoke on my own. I came today because I pity you, sister, and I want to tell you some truths. Sister, the emperor you trust the most has deceived you. You will never have children. Never. As soon as the words fell, only the crackling sound of charcoal from the brazier remained in the air. The hall was eerily quiet. The next second, she lunged at me. But I easily dodged. Her face was pale, her whole body trembling, and though she tried to sound calm, there was a clear hint of panic in her voice. Shen Yunshu, what do you mean? How dare you curse me? I smiled faintly and spoke with ease. Sister, what are you saying? How would Yunshu dare to curse you? I'm merely speaking the truth. Your father was once the great Desert Khan who commanded countless troops. Though he is dead, you still carry half the blood of the desert people. Have you not heard the saying, if they are not of our kind, their hearts must be different? If you were to have a child, it's hard to say whether the desert people might develop improper ambitions. If they were to support your child as emperor to secure benefits for their northern frontier, how could the emperor ever allow it? Moreover, the northern border has only been stable for a few years. How could the emperor possibly take such a gamble? So, the emperor can give you endless affection, but he can never give you a child. But dear sister, why can't you see through this truth that's as obvious as fire heating oil? The emperor's thoughts are so meticulous. The fertility-enhancing decoction you drink every day is actually a contraceptive potion. But sister would never know the truth about the medicine. Just as she searches for the best imperial physicians every day to examine it, she still can't find out. Because the only master of the entire Imperial Medical Institute is the emperor. Shu Yuran suddenly lunged at me, her hands gripping my shoulders tightly, yet her eyes were filled with doubt and panic. No, it must be you, this vile woman, sowing discord between us. The emperor and I have shared so many years of affection, he would never treat me this way. Absolutely not. All I wanted was a child from him. Seeing me standing motionless as she grabbed me, she suddenly let go. Her eyes seeming to recall something. When I entered the palace to accompany my aunt, I often saw the emperor being bullied by others. Though he was thin and small, his eyes were full of light. Even when facing the mistreatment from various servants, his back remained straight and unwavering. I just couldn't stand it, so I took severe revenge on everyone who had bullied him. And only then did his life in the palace become better. He said that as long as he became emperor, I would be his only empress. Not only that, he would make me the most favored empress in history, giving me supreme affection. I would be his only woman. At first, I naturally didn't believe it, but when he said it, he was so sincere, as if a single glance could span eternity. So I willingly helped him. He wanted the throne, so I persuaded my aunt, consort Rong, to switch sides and did everything possible to help him win over the ministers. Only then did he narrowly secure the throne. Then she turned around, as if drained of all energy, and slowly dragged her steps toward the bed. How could a lowly woman like you possibly understand the years of affection between him and me? He said, with the imperial decree in place, I cannot become the empress, but he can give me his soul love. I don't care about being some worthless empress, I only want his love, all of it. But after you arrived, everything changed. I could feel it, his heart was gradually no longer with me, that day. He almost smashed that jade pendant, the token of love he gave me, which I had treasured for so many years. He just picked it up and was about to break it. It seems he has forgotten. Anything can be smashed, but that jade pendant must not be. Perhaps there are too many treasures in the palace. He has grown accustomed to them and no longer remembers what is most important. Or perhaps, there are too many women in the palace, and he has gradually forgotten who it was that accompanied him from having nothing to the pinnacle of power. She gently sat on the edge of the bed, and when she looked up again, her eyes were filled with tears. I looked at her, remembering how in my previous life after I died, my spirit watched her write a letter to Xie Yanji, saying that he had done very well, saying that my father and consort Rong's faction had long been at odds, after the emperor's throne was firmly established. His political views increasingly diverged from those of my father. My father advocated for benevolent governance, while the emperor considered it a woman's soft-hearted mercy, so the emperor had long wanted to eliminate my father. Now, by wiping out my Shen clan, they are not only easing the burden for her aunt but also relieving the emperor's worries. All for the sake of her emperor. So in my previous life, was it just that my Shen family, hundreds of people, deserved to be bathed in a river of blood? Then, I gently leaned in and whispered into her ear, do you know why you got pregnant? It's because I had someone secretly switch your medicine. Do you know why your child suddenly disappeared? It's because the emperor fed you a miscarriage-inducing drug mixed with safflower in your prenatal tonic. Although your mother is Han Chinese, you carry the blood of a foreign race. Do you really think the emperor would risk the throne being usurped by having a child with someone of foreign descent? You see, such a simple truth, yet you fail to understand it, to see through it, or perhaps, deep down, you do know, but you chose to gamble, to test your weight in his heart. Now you know, the emperor does not love you as much as you imagined. He loves no one. He only loves himself. Upon hearing this, she looked at me in disbelief, her face full of shock and horror. Then, she covered her head and let out a loud wail, crying and laughing as if she had gone mad. Her voice was piercing and mournful, like that of a vengeful ghost. You see, no matter how much you love someone, you should never treat another person's life as worthless or as a tool to curry favor. She loved the emperor too much, so much that she lost herself. Now that she knows the truth, and with her strong-willed nature, she can no longer force herself to feign affection for the emperor. Her power has faded. I took the phoenix hairpin from my bun, tossed it beside her, and quietly left. I know, those who are too rigid in nature never live long, and what I excel at most is killing the heart along with the person. Xu Yuo is dead. The very night I left, she set herself on fire in the Weiyang Palace. I heard the fire in Weiyang Palace burned for a full day and night, and her remains were charred black by the flames. When the palace servants carried out her body, her hand, burned to charcoal, still tightly clutched the token of love between her and the emperor, that jade pendant. When the emperor came to my palace, his complexion was very poor. He held me tightly, his voice choked with emotion. Then, he looked at me and asked if he had done wrong. I looked at him with a heart full of pity and gave him a kiss. The emperor is the son of heaven, and the son of heaven is never wrong. Your Majesty, you are tired. Allow your humble consort to attend to your rest. He sighed at the scent of pear blossoms filling the room, yet obediently lay down on my bed. After I teased him repeatedly, he flipped over and pinned me beneath him. The air instantly thick with overwhelming desire. The earlier sorrow had long since melted into trembling, deep kisses. Beneath the trembling bed curtains, I laughed with such unrestrained joy for the first time. But as I laughed, tears began to stream down my face. The man she had loved her entire life, others only needed to play a small trick to easily distract his heart. For the first time, I felt that Xu Yuo was so pitiful. Xu Yuo, oh Xu Yuo, look, this is the man you've loved your whole life. If I remember correctly, your remains should not yet be cold. After Xu Yuan's death, the number of pregnant concubines in the palace suddenly increased, with Xu Yuan gone and a new batch of court ladies arriving in the palace. the emperor became much more unrestrained. 2 months later, the emperor actually summoned 3 concubines to the hall of mental cultivation at the same time. Upon hearing this, the next day the Empress Dowager directly reprimanded the emperor, saying he was being reckless and violating ancestral rules. Naturally, as his nominal mother, she had to put on a show, but my aunt did not actually punish him, and I had long since used the excuse of catching a chill. Feigning ignorance and keeping myself far away from it all, the emperor claims to know his mistakes, but behind the scenes, he still finds endless ways to misbehave. He simply changed the location, quietly slipping into the consort's palace, and I, of course, must protect the consorts. These newly entered palace ladies are, in name, the daughters of ministers, but in reality, it was I who went to great lengths to purchase these skinny horses under a pseudonym from Yangju Prefecture. Each of them was more delicate than a flower, radiant, ethereal, pure, and charming. As the one in charge of the imperial selection, I had arranged everything in advance, ensuring they entered the palace as daughters of low-ranking officials. In the emperor's eyes, their maternal families held such low status that he had no reason to be wary of them. Since that is the case, one need only fully enjoy the fine moments and beautiful women. Their purpose is to exhaust the emperor's vitality in every possible way, without the restraint of reason and loyal ministers. The fervor he once had as a prince gradually faded away in the soft, fragrant embrace of these beauties. It is said that to die beneath the peony is to be a romantic ghost. Song Huijin, do you like the grand gift I gave you? Soon, half a year passed, and the palace welcomed 2 new princesses and 1 prince, a rare and joyous occasion. The emaciated emperor was overjoyed and immediately named the prince the crown prince, yet his life, gnawed away by frankincense and indulgence in wine and women, had long been slowly drained. In the storax sent by the imperial physician, I added a type of incense that induces drowsiness. Over time, it inevitably leads to mental confusion and a gradual addiction to wine and sensual pleasures, and the pear fragrance that the emperor loves the most just happens to mask the scent of that incense. That's why, before, he increasingly enjoyed coming to my place and grew fonder of my tender embrace. Under the diligent service of several thin horses, the emperor soon drank the dear blood wine. He even had the imperial physician secretly prepare a potent medicine to strengthen his body. 2 months later, one day, the emperor had just risen from a consort when he suddenly collapsed and could not get up. After examining him, the imperial physicians shook their heads repeatedly, saying there was no way to save him. I sat by his bedside, feeding him bowl after bowl of medicinal soup, pretending to weep with the other palace consorts, tears falling like pear blossoms in the rain. Now that the crown prince has been chosen, Song Huijin naturally cannot be allowed to remain. That night, I dismissed all the palace consorts and fed him the final bowl of medicinal soup. He looked at me, smiling as he drank it, but the next moment, he tightly grasped my hand. That was a potent tonic, but for his already weakened body, he couldn't handle it. He clutched my hand tightly, my eyes bloodshot, glaring fiercely at him. Song Huijin, not a single person in the entire harem loves you. The one who loved you the most is dead, burned to ashes in a fire, leaving nothing behind. Song Huijin, you are cold-hearted by nature. In the end, you turned your blade against everyone who ever supported you. This is your retribution. In your previous life, you slaughtered hundreds of my Shen clan over baseless accusations. In this life, let me take charge of this realm for you. His bulging eyes stared at me, bloodshot, but he could no longer utter a single word. His hand, which had been tightly gripping mine, slowly fell and never rose again. Yes, I am grateful to Xie Yanji, but I hate Shu Yuareo, but I hate Song Huijin even more. In my past life, my spirit watched as my parents and elder brother were beheaded, their only fault being their excessive loyalty, and this sincere patriotic sentiment, in Song Huijin's heart, was nothing but treason and rebellion. Song Huijin, you truly are unworthy of being an emperor. 9 funeral bells tolled, and the next day, the imperial capital underwent a drastic change. The young prince was too young, so the Empress Dowager assumed regency, both in reason and in emotion. The minister could not refute. Thus, I became the youngest Empress Dowager in history. As for the affairs of the court, I felt reassured with the assistance of the ministers. Just after the court session, I handed the young emperor to the wet nurse, and a familiar-looking eunuch, limping on his leg, came forward to offer tea. I looked and immediately broke into a joyful smile. Isn't this my old acquaintance Xie Yanji? He was kneeling on the ground, trembling with fear, not daring to utter a word. Oh, right, he had long since had his tongue torn out, so how could he possibly speak? I leaned in close and whispered softly in his ear, Xie Yanji, that day I arranged for someone to save your life early on, but it wasn't for nothing. You have good looks, so I directly sold you into the Southern Breeze Pavilion. I heard you were quite popular among the young masters of noble families. What a pity. You actually tried to run away in the end. Every time you ran, they broke your bones. In the end, they nearly beat you to death, and it was I who saved you again. Now that I have severed your lineage's fortune and arranged for you to enter the palace, see what great blessings you have received. However, while the death penalty may be avoided, living punishment is inevitable. I recall that in Shu Yuero's palace, there was a eunuch who also had a fondness for handsome young eunuchs. I have specially transferred him to the Shokong Palace. He will treat you well, from now on. You shall be with him. After saying this, a lewd-looking eunuch nearby quickly knelt down to express his gratitude. I nodded, and the eunuch dragged Xie Yanji out like a dog. Soon after, a piercing scream came from the servants' quarters, startling a few birds into flight. I sipped my tea and casually rewarded the palace maids and eunuchs serving the tea with a handful of gold melon seeds, for no other reason than that today's tea was exceptionally sweet and fragrant. The end. The second story. All my life, I schemed and plotted to win Shen Hanju, only to end up in a marriage filled with nothing but resentment. He loves the fake heiress who took my place and enjoyed my wealth and status for over a decade, so he hates me. He hates me for turning his childhood sweetheart into a fool. I hate even more that I committed countless evil deeds, leading to the complete destruction of his Shen family. Yet in the end, it was he who knelt on the jade steps, using his life. He brought me away to survive, he said, Jiang Yangyu, if only time could flow backward, I would rather that day I never reached out to you. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the year I was just recognized and brought back to the minister's residence. The man before me was still youthful, his gaze gentle. Shen Hanju, this time, I'll let you go. I look at the faces before me that should have long since passed away, feeling a bit dazed. My father and brother look anxious, pressing me urgently, Jiang Yangyu, where have you hidden A-chan? So I've been reborn at this moment. I lured Jiang Chan out of the mansion, hired a gang of bandits, and plotted to have her lose her chastity. Ever since I was recognized and brought back to the Jiang residence, I've always been opposing Jiang Chan, both openly and covertly. Everyone saw it with their own eyes. Moreover, Jiang Chan's maid came forward to accuse me, saying that I was the one who called her out. I returned safely. But Jiang Chan was nowhere to be found. Who did it is as clear as day. In my previous life, I firmly insisted that I knew nothing, claiming I had just gone out to play with Jiang Chan, only for her to go missing. When Jiang Chan was finally found, not only had she lost her chastity, but the trauma had also left her mentally impaired. I never felt that I had done anything wrong. After all these years of luxury and privilege Jiang Chan enjoyed were only because she had taken my place. I only took back what was mine. What wrong have I done? When I was a child, I was stolen by an enemy. To spare my mother from grief, the household found a baby girl to take my place. Later, the enemy told my mother that after stealing me, he had abandoned me, and I had long since passed into the cycle of reincarnation. From then on, my mother fell gravely ill and passed away in deep sorrow, but in fact, I was picked up by a couple back then. However, my adoptive father was addicted to gambling, and my adoptive mother was weak and incompetent. When I was 6 years old, they sold me, along with my Yang-inscribed jade pendant from infancy, to a wealthy local family. I have been a maid in the Zhong household for many years. In the end, I never knew what powerful figure they had offended, but their family was destroyed in an instant. That year, during the famine, I met a kind family distributing porridge while I was on the run. The young lady of that family was not only beautiful, with graceful and elegant manners, but also had a heart of compassion, personally giving out alms outside the city. She is Jiang Chan. The nanny beside Jiang Chan recognized me almost immediately. I was the spitting image of the deceased madam. And I still carried the wild goose jade pendant I had worn since childhood. Only then did I know, so it turned out I was not the maid, Xue Xiaoyan, but the legitimate daughter of the minister's household, Jiang Yangyu. Although my father and brother feel guilty towards me, we are not very close. What they care about has always been Jiang Chan. Naturally, I feel upset inside. The only one who noticed was actually Shen Hanju. On the day I returned home, everyone was worried about whether Jiang Chan would be upset. But only he came over and reached out his hand to me. Is this sister are you? Truly as adorable as I imagined. It was probably at that moment that the obsession in my heart began to take root and sprout. In my previous life, after Jiang Chan was found and brought back, I was still immersed in the joy of being able to marry Shen Hanju, but I never expected that when Shen Hanju came to propose, it was still Jiang Chan he wanted to marry. At that moment, I was so enraged that my eyes nearly burst, unsure whether I had gone mad or Shen Hanju had. Jiang Chan has already lost her purity. Even if he is willing to marry her, the Shen family would never let her through the door. Why would he, despite all the gossip and scandal, still insist on marrying her? So, I drugged Shen Hanju, took off my own clothes, and lay beside him, pinning this scandalous affair on this noble and upright gentleman. I forced Shen Hanju to marry me. After marriage, he never once set foot in my courtyard. Only then did I realize that he had always loved Jiang Chan, even if she was covered in filth, even if she had gone completely mad. I could never compare to her. Later, in order to clear myself of the suspicion of framing Jiang Chan, I colluded with the assassins of the Tianji Pavilion, intending to eliminate that den of bandits. Little did I expect that years later, the Tianji Pavilion would collude with foreign powers. This fire followed me and spread to the Shen residence. Even more unexpectedly, Shen Hanju knelt with my father and brother on the jade steps of the imperial palace, taking all the blame upon themselves. The men of the Jiang and Shen families were sentenced to beheading, while the women were enslaved as government servants. My last meeting with Shen Hanchao was in prison. I questioned him frantically. Why did you save me? Don't you hate and despise me? Wouldn't handing me over better appease the emperor's wrath? Why did you save me, Shen Hanju? Tell me. Did you ever love me too? He was in a sorry state, yet he still smiled, looking at me with a face full of pity. Do you know why Aiken went mad? I stared at him blankly. Of course I knew no one understood it better than I did, but he said, back when she was kidnapped, her maid shielded her from the bandits, buying her time to escape, but she actually ran back on her own. Do you know why? Because she thought you were still there. A single sentence struck like a thunderbolt. She thought you were still there. She ran back to save you, and she willingly endured humiliation all to save you. You thought you handled it without anyone knowing, didn't you? But you didn't expect that one of them survived. And he gave you away. Chan was traumatized. Her mind became like that of a 6-year-old child. I married her that day to atone for your sins, and for my own. I numbly shook my head. No, it can't be. You must be lying to me. You must be lying. Shen Hanju looked at me with a bitter smile. Jiang Yangyu, if only time could flow backward, I would rather I had never reached out my hand to you that day, seeing that I remained silent for so long. My father raised his hand and slapped me hard across the face. If anything happens to A-chan, I will not let you off. It was at this moment that Shen Hanju arrived. He had heard about Jiang Chan's disappearance and was equally anxious, his brows furrowed with worry. Sister Au, quickly tell us where you've taken A-chan. If this is over a momentary quarrel between sisters, it would be terrible to let it lead to a grave mistake. Hearing Shen Hanju's voice, I almost burst into tears. I know where she is. I have no reason to harm Jiang Chan anymore. Even if she were to die without a burial place, Shen Hanju would probably marry her spirit tablet. They didn't have to put in much effort to find Jiang Chan. This time, even the maid who protected her only suffered some minor injuries. For a moment, everyone surrounded Jiang Chan as if they had recovered a long-lost treasure. Watching Shen Hanju beside her breathe a sigh of relief, I felt a slight ache in my heart. Shen Hanju, if I let go of my infatuation and obsession with you, in this lifetime, could you live to 100 years? The first to notice my gaze was Jiang Chan. She ran towards me, her voice full of lingering fear. It's fortunate that you ran out in time and rushed home to alert us, which is why I managed to escape danger. At these words, everyone fell silent. father and brother, along with Shen Hanju, were filled with shame on their faces. As if regretting having wronged me so easily just moments before, they were all at a loss for what to do. Jiang Chan also noticed their reactions and hurriedly explained on my behalf. She said we had agreed to go to the temple together, but unexpectedly encountered some ruffians. Unfortunately, I was clever enough to save her. She said it with great conviction. I burst into laughter, startling everyone. But as I laughed, my vision gradually blurred. What a fool! She had no idea she was on the verge of falling into an abyss of eternal damnation. Still, she desperately defended the one truly to blame. In this life and the last, I lost to such a foolish woman. For several days in a row, I shut myself indoors. My father and brothers thought I was unhappy all day because I had been wronged that day. They even sent many things to my courtyard. In my previous life, I tried my best to fit in with them, but I never received such treatment. It turns out that just by saving Jiang Chan, I could win their favor. My elder brother even sent over a few exquisitely crafted mechanical toys. A wild goose spread its wings, looking incredibly lifelike. I thanked him calmly. My brother rubbed his nose, a bit unaccustomed to it, and said I had been a little too obedient lately. I sneered inwardly, not to brag. If I were to cause trouble, you wouldn't even get a coffin. A few days later, the princess sent out invitations to all the noble houses, inviting everyone to a flower viewing party. The flower viewing banquet has always been a great opportunity to forge connections and make acquaintances. Jiang Chan chattered away beside me. While I secretly observed these noble lords and dignitaries, the current emperor has 3 sons, the crown prince, the 3rd prince, and the 7th prince. Among them, only the 7th prince remains unmarried. He has been enfeoffed as the Prince of Ning by His Majesty and will soon depart for his fiefdom. This flower viewing banquet is most likely being held in his honor. The 7th prince, Xiao Ji, possesses stunning beauty with delicate, almost feminine features, and is of imperial lineage. Yet, few noble families in the capital wish to marry their daughters to him. This is because his mother was once the emperor's most beloved consort, but her maternal family, the Gus, became embroiled in a rebellion case, attempting to overthrow the emperor. The emperor annihilated the entire Jiyu family, sparing only Xiao Ji, which was already an act of mercy for past affections. Moreover, although the 7th prince was handsome, he was an out-and-out playboy. Obsessed with mechanical devices and jade stones every day, hardly a suitable match. Thus, no one would have ever imagined that in the end, it would be Xiao Ji who ascended the throne. I casually made up an excuse to send Jiang Chan away, hoping to find a secluded spot, but unexpectedly ran into Shen Hanju. The man before me had not yet attained the steadiness of his later years. He was still somewhat green, though his gentle eyes remained unchanged, as they always had been. When I was a young maid in the Zhong residence, I overheard the wealthy young masters say, "Love is compassion. If someone starts to pity you, it means they're about to fall in love with you." So, I wanted Shen Hanju to pity me. Am I not pitiful enough? All my loved ones have been taken away by Jiang Chan. Moreover, Jiang Chan is dignified but rather dull. I am much more interesting than her. Shen Hanchao's eyes gradually began to notice me. I thought, as long as I have Shen Hanchao, I don't need anyone else. But Shen Hanju is a good person. His pitifulness is truly pitiful. Yet he got tangled up with a piece of trash like me. Someone so good, so compassionate, shouldn't have ended up like this. I said some harsh words to you earlier, and you've been shutting yourself in these days. So I haven't had a chance to apologize. It took me a while to recall the harsh words he had spoken that day when he frowned and asked me where Jiang Chan was. I thought to myself, you actually went easy on me. In the past, I was always the one initiating conversations. Now that I suddenly fell silent, Shen Hanju clearly wasn't used to it and had to say, "I plan to come and propose in a few days." My heart couldn't help but tremble. Perhaps it's for the best. Didn't I already know this when I let go of my obsession? Everything should return to its proper course. Very well. Shen Hanju's ears turned even redder, but I had no mind to appreciate it, only saying that my maid was waiting for me. Just as I hid behind the rockery, I was busy calming my emotions. A dagger quietly pressed against the small of my back. From behind came Xiao Ji's deep voice. "Miss Jiang, you have quite the nerve, daring to seek cooperation with a tiger. I have my own ways." The seventh prince need only say whether you wish to cooperate with me or not. I showed no fear, turning around to push his dagger aside. I couldn't help but grumble inwardly. You call yourself a tiger. At most, you're just a rabbit right now. A few days ago, I sent a letter to Xiaoji. The letter stated that I knew where the person he was looking for was. Not only is he looking for this person, but the crown prince and the third prince are also searching. Therefore, although Xiaoji was on guard, he only dared to intimidate me and didn't dare to harm me rashly. That person is very important to him. He can't afford to gamble. Xiaoji narrowed his peach blossom eyes. The charm that had lingered at the corners of his eyes while admiring the flowers vanished without a trace, replaced by a flash of ruthlessness, gradually overlapping with the image of the frail emperor from his past life. What is it that you seek? He asked. I know your highness is no ordinary man. I bet on your victory. Xiaoji sneered. The Jiang family supports the third prince. Yet you are certain I will win. In truth, what Shen Hanju said in the previous life was correct. He wanted to save his own family's womenfolk, and since I happened to be among them, I ended up reading too much into it. The destruction of the Shun and Jiang families was because the third prince lost the power struggle against the crown prince. The Tianji Pavilion was merely the spark that set it off, so this time, I've long since clung tightly to the real power, ensuring the Shun and Jiang families won't repeat the same tragedy. I didn't answer Xiaoji's question, but instead said, you can choose not to believe me. To prevent me from leaking the information, you might as well kill me right here. However, I dare say that I am the only one in this world who can lead you to that person. If you kill me, you will surely regret it deeply. I looked at him with a hint of provocation. It seems that having died once really gives one a lot more confidence when speaking. Xiaoji hesitated, lowering his eyelashes as if weighing his options. Speaking of which, the last person I saw in my previous life was Xiaoji. At that time, I was working as a laborer in the laundry bureau. While lost in thought, I hummed a Jiangnan folk song I had learned back when I was still a maid in the mansion. That was the first time I met Xiaoji. It was only later that I learned that this man, so strikingly handsome, was the new emperor they spoke of, the one known for his cruelty and countless killings. Xiaoji said that his childhood wet nurse used to sing this song, only, there was a slight difference in the melody. I explained with a smile that this was a lullaby from the south, often sung to soothe children to sleep. By simply changing the child's name in the lyrics, the tune naturally took on a different feel. From then on, Xiaoji often came to see me, when his headache struck. Only that lullaby could bring him a little relief. He told me many things about himself. Everything he had done to get to this point was to avenge his mother. But for the sake of revenge, many people important to him died by his side. To avenge these people, even more lives were lost, again and again. The cycle repeated. When he finally ascended the throne and looked back, he understood what it meant to stand at the peak alone, to be a solitary ruler with no one by his side. Xiaoji transferred me to serve before the emperor. He did nothing but listen to me sing, and occasionally have me prepare a plate of that cloyingly sweet pastry for him. His days were numbered. Beneath that splendid robe was a body ravaged by illness. But unexpectedly, I died a little earlier than he did. Xiaoji's harem remained empty, and the noble families were all watching closely. Because of Xiaoji's favor, I became the target of everyone's criticism. A cup of poisoned wine ended my muddled life. I still remember before I died, Xiaoji rushed towards me, his eyes filled with panic. At that moment I thought, how pitiful. So he was the master of all under heaven, all his schemes and calculations. In the end, it turned out to be just like me. Never got what I wanted, I promise you. But you are an unmarried daughter of the Jiang family. How can you help me find that person? A single sentence brought my thoughts back. Xiaoji seemed to have finally made up his mind. Each step he took was not easy. But in this life, with me here, he might suffer a little less. I had already made up my mind a few days ago. If I marry Xiaoji, he will soon leave for his fief, which naturally makes it easier for me to act. However, the Jiang family is already aligned with the third prince. Although not particularly powerful in the court, they still hold some influence. If I were to marry him rashly, not to mention whether my family would agree, it would be too conspicuous and would definitely attract the attention of the crown prince and the third prince. So, I came up with a plan. Nothing is better for making a clean break than pretending to be dead. after the flower viewing banquet ended. I once again shut myself away at home. It was Jiang Chan who kept coming to bother me every day. That day, Shen Hanju came to our house to discuss matters with my father. I kindly brought a plate of pastries for Jiang Chan to eat. Noticing that she seemed absent-minded and restless today, I suggested we take a stroll in the garden. Jiang Chan hesitated for a long time before asking me if I knew what Shen Hanju was here for today. Of course I know. He came to propose marriage. In my previous life, it was also on this day that he came to ask for Jiang Chan's hand in marriage. Jiang Chan's tense body suddenly relaxed, and a relieved smile appeared on her face. So you knew. I will bless you both. I was wondering, has she become foolish in this lifetime? Jiang Chan noticed the confusion on my face and asked, don't you know, Brother Hanju is here to propose to you. I froze on the spot and blurted out, why would Shen Hanju marry me? What about you then? This marriage was always meant to be yours. Besides, Brother Hanju doesn't like me anyway. She spoke softer and softer, finally forcing out a bitter smile. And actually, I don't want to get married at all. I'd rather wander the world and see what's out there. Her dejected look made me laugh in frustration. Jiang Chan, you're not pitying me, are you? Thinking you're giving up Shen Hanju for me? Jiang Chan stared at me blankly, shaking her head hurriedly. I didn't mean it that way. I gripped her thin shoulders, glaring at her fiercely. You owe me anyway, but whether I want it or not is my business. I don't need your pity. With how foolish you are, thinking about traveling the world, you'd be sold before you even left your mansion. Jiang Chan was scolded harshly by me and was on the verge of tears. I really do still hate her. I reached out and pushed her into the garden pond. In Jiang Chan's terrified eyes, I heard myself whisper softly, I hate you. But you'd better stay this naive for the rest of your life. I didn't avoid anyone, just pushed Jiang Chan into the water like that. The maid screamed and jumped down to save the person. The people in the front yard, hearing the commotion, also rushed over. I had no defense for what I had done. My father trembled with rage, pointing at my nose and cursing. Your mother, kind-hearted all her life, how could she have given birth to such a vicious daughter like you? They must think Jiang Chan is more like a mother's daughter than I am. But what can I do? I haven't even met my biological mother, and I don't know what kind of person she was. Shen Hanju's gaze toward me was also full of disappointment. Sister, are you? Why did you do this? He probably regrets it again. Who made it so that I could only be reborn at this time? If it were a little earlier, I would have granted his wish and preferred never to have known him. Why? I laughed foolishly. Because I hate you all. Jiang Chan is a wealthy young lady, a noble woman from a high-ranking family. When she was picking maids, did any of you think about how many years I had been a maid? When she gave out alms, did any of you think about the scenes of me fighting with dogs for food? You all knew long ago that it was me who tricked Jiang Chan into going out that day, didn't you? You just held back from saying it to avoid upsetting her, pretending everything was harmonious. I find it utterly disgusting. I hate all of you. Why did you give everything that should have been mine to her? Why was she given love and affection, while all I got was guilt? A stream of warmth flowed down my face, yet I felt a strange sense of relief in my chest. The words I had held back for 2 lifetimes, I never thought I would finally speak them aloud here. No one spoke again. This was a dead end from the start. Father sighed and ordered his men to lock me in my bedroom. To await Jiang Chan's awakening before making a final decision, I told everyone to get out. The pastries Jiang Chan ate had something I put in them, enough to make her sleep for a while. Sitting alone in this beautiful bedroom, I vaguely remember the joy I felt the first day I walked in the darkness. A candle suddenly lit up. Then, I reached out and pushed it over. On the other side of the Jiang residence, although Jiang Chan was rescued in time, she remained unconscious for a long while. Everyone was shrouded in gloom because of the words spoken earlier. The eldest brother was the first to speak. No matter how angry she might be, how could she go so far as to kill her own sister? The father sighed. If we're talking about right and wrong, we are more in the wrong. She is sensitive at heart. How could she not feel the distance and closeness? It's my fault for letting the sisters turn against each other. It was at this moment that Jiang Chan slowly woke up. The first thing she said upon opening her eyes was, "Where is AU?" Brother was both angry and heartbroken. You're still thinking about her, but she certainly isn't thinking about you. Jiang Chan, however, began to cry. That's not true. You must have some unspeakable difficulty. I always felt she didn't really mean to harm me. She looked very sad back then. Go find her quickly. I want to hear her say it to my face. The elder brother sighed helplessly, rubbing his forehead. You're just too kind-hearted. That's why she took advantage of you. Just then, a sudden commotion erupted outside. Someone shouted, "Fire! Fire!" Everyone was startled and quickly rose to look outside. The source of the blazing firelight was none other than the courtyard of the second young miss of the mansion. Xiaoji still hadn't managed to marry his princess consort. However, he was an unfavored prince to begin with, and a few days ago, he had further displeased the emperor. Suspecting that he was deliberately delaying marriage to stay in the capital, he was directly sent to his fiefdom. After all, once a prince leaves the capital, he completely withdraws from the race for the throne. In the carriage, Xiaoji rested with his eyes closed. His bodyguard, however, did not think much of me. I have never seen a woman as bold as you, daring to have the master steal a female corpse into the Jiang residence to help you deceive everyone. Do you know this act will completely strip you of your status as the Jiang family's young lady? Going to such lengths, could it be that you've taken a fancy to the master and wish to offer yourself as a concubine? Even someone as composed as Xiaoji was quite taken aback by these words. Only then did I turn to look at Jiyu Ju. In my previous life, I had never seen him. I only heard a thing or two from Xiaoji. Jiyu Ju was the guard his uncle left for him, but in fact, he was his cousin. It's a pity that she died so early. Miss Jiang, I have no intention of probing into why you left the Jiang residence, but I have fulfilled my promise to you. You must also keep your promise to me. Xiaoji slowly opened his eyes, a trace of sternness flashing in their depths. Yet I waved my hand without a hint of guilt. That's only natural. Let's go pick her up right away. I led Xiaoji to a rural field, turning left and right, and even took several wrong turns along the way. This angered Jiyu Ju so much that he nearly drew his sword, bluntly accusing me of deceiving them. Just then, a dilapidated thatched cottage suddenly came into view. I pointed it out to Xiaoji, signaling for him to knock on the door. The door was opened by an old woman. Her face was hideous. With most of it seemingly destroyed, her eyes were cloudy and her gaze vacant. Yet at the very first sight of this old woman, Xiaoji froze, nearly brought to tears. He called out softly, "Nanny Wen." The old woman paid no heed, showing no reaction to the address whatsoever. Her clouded gaze swept past Xiaoji, and for a moment, it seemed to clear as she looked at me. Her voice was raspy, yet warm. "Is that Yang?" Auntie Wen was someone I knew from my time as a maid in the Zhong household. But back then, we didn't call her Auntie Wen, we called her Ugly Granny. Ugly Granny wasn't just unattractive, she was often out of her mind, too. The steward, taking pity on her, reluctantly gave her a place to stay and some odd jobs to do, keeping her out of the way so she wouldn't offend any important guests. I was the youngest when I entered the mansion. Although my foster parents didn't treat me well, I still missed home deeply. Cho Po was the one who cared for me the most in the mansion. Whenever she looked at me, she would have moments of clarity. She said she once had a little master who always fussed and wouldn't sleep at night, so she would sing to soothe him. When I was a maid in the Central Plains, where would I have heard the tunes of Jiangnan? It was just something Ugly Granny taught me. And those sickeningly sweet pastries, Ugly Granny taught me how to make those too. She said her little master loved it the most. Later, the household scattered, and I lost her during my exile. In her past life, Xiaoji had been searching for her, but Cho Po's face was half ruined, and the 2 red moles on her hands had been burned off to hide her identity. Coupled with her worsening madness, how could she be easy to find? By the time Xiaoji found her, she had already gone completely mad. With only a few days left to live, of course, Xiaoji wasn't the only one looking for her. During the palace coup back then, Nanny Wen narrowly escaped with her life. And she still held evidence of the current empress framing Xiaoji's mother. Thus, everyone was searching for her, some to obtain the evidence, others to silence her for good. Later, Xiaoji also relied on this to overturn his mother's case. Winning a brilliant comeback, Xiaoji brought Nanny Wen back home, late at night. By the light from the room, I practiced the movements with the newly sewn knee pads in the corridor. After all, I had been a maid before, so the basic skills were still there. Even after 2 lifetimes, I've lived a life of luxury for so long that my hands have become unaccustomed to work. The knee pads I made are crooked and not very presentable. Xiaoji's father was truly not a good man, abandoning his son in such a harsh and bitter place. But in this lifetime, I still hope that Xiaoji will remain on the throne a while longer. I can't let him suffer from a host of illnesses again. When Xiaoji came out of the room, his eyes were red and swollen. I had only ever seen him looking listless before, never knowing that in his youth he had such a vibrant side. Nanny Wen didn't recognize Xiaoji, probably because he was so different from the young master in her memory. But now, she isn't beyond all hope of recovery. One day, she will remember. Nanny once told me about her time in the palace, which is how I knew her identity. And about you, I made up a bunch of nonsense to Xiaoji. He probably will never know that all the things about him were actually told to me by his own mouth. But fortunately, with Nanny Wen around, the matter was smoothed over. Ju even did a complete turnaround. He knows best how important Nanny Wen is to Xiaoji. Miss Jiang, I was rude earlier. I hope you are magnanimous and won't hold it against me. I suppressed the smile at the corner of my lips and said magnanimously, after traveling for so long, my whole body aches. It would be nice to have some hot water for a bath. Ju immediately caught the underlying meaning in my words and hurried off to boil water. Under the dim moonlight, I leaned against the wall, watching Xiaoji's somewhat lonely figure, and hummed that Jiangnan folk tune once more. After a long while, I heard him say softly, "Thank you." Scattered in the wind, the state and prefecture governments operate with decentralized power, leaving Prince Xiaoji with a title in name only. Even a powerful dragon cannot suppress a local snake, let alone an unfavored prince. In his previous life, Xiaoji endured much hardship before he could stir the murky waters of his fiefdom. During those days I spent secluded indoors. I was diligently recalling the major events that would occur in the coming years. The prices of grain, land, and so on will all be affected by these major events. With this information, who would worry about not making money? Who wouldn't want to join in when there's money to be made? When others see that you have value to offer, they'll naturally send you an invitation. Xiaoji soon got along well with the officials of the prefecture. Another winter arrived, with heavy snow weighing down the bamboo outside the window. Xiaoji changed into a newly tailored black fox fur cloak and leaned over his desk, his well-defined fingers guiding the brush across the paper, as if he could no longer bear my gaze. He looked up and asked, "How long do you intend to keep staring?" Every time I see him looking so proper and innocent, I can't help but tease him. "Your Highness is so handsome. Why won't you let people look at you?" Back in the capital, I heard many women fought so fiercely to catch a glimpse of Your Highness that they even ended up bruised and battered. Xiaoji's ears grew even redder, and I felt he was somewhat disgracing the reputation of being a playboy in the capital. He struggled for a long time before blurting out a disjointed sentence. "No women came to see me. That's all nonsense. Even if there were, I didn't look at them." I gave a half-hearted response, but my thoughts drifted far away. At this time in the previous life, a major incident occurred because of Xiaoji's beauty. Commander Zhu Mo had a fondness for beautiful people, regardless of gender, in the previous life. It was by submitting to him that Xiaoji managed to break through the ironclad defenses of the fiefdom. That frail figure surfaced in his mind once again. What was Xiaoji thinking at that time? I probably will never know, because in this life, he doesn't have to repeat the same mistakes. I will step into the game myself. Banquets for high officials and nobles are a common occurrence. For convenience, I occasionally disguise myself as Xiaoji's concubine and accompany him to these events. Zhu Mo's gaze falls on me once again. He has hinted to me many times that I should follow him. I refused every time, but this time, he used Xiaoji to threaten me. The Prince of Ning is thriving in his fiefdom, while the two in the capital are fighting fiercely. They probably don't want to be the mantis stalking the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind, do they? As soon as the banquet ended, Zhu Mo pulled me away. Xiaoji grabbed my hand, his eyes narrowing as he fixed a sharp gaze on Zhu Mo. Zhu Mo, however, showed no fear at all. "Your Highness, are you really so stingy? Even Miss Yang has agreed, can't you bear to part with it?" I nodded obediently and, while Xiaoji was still stunned, secretly slipped the handkerchief into his hand. Zhu Mo was in a hurry, but I insisted that he return to the estate first. He just thought I was thin-skinned. A young brat like Xiaoji doesn't know how to cherish someone. You, little wild goose, have flown right into my hands. If you follow me, you will have endless wealth and honor. Xiaoji is nothing but a pretty face with a few clever tricks up his sleeve. I covered my face with a light laugh, and Jumo eagerly closed in on me. The next moment, the dazed look on his face suddenly froze. It was replaced by sheer horror. I kicked his rigid body away, twisted the dagger in his chest, and then yanked it out violently. Jumo collapsed to the ground with a heavy thud, splattering blood all over my face. I spat on him, a faint smile curling at the corner of my mouth. No wonder he's such a scumbag, even his blood stinks. Jumo, who started out as a street thug, acts arrogantly and overbearingly, making many enemies, and he doesn't even have the self-awareness to realize it. He still doesn't know, he's the one who's out. Xiaoji stood outside the door, his guards having already surrounded the place completely. Jumo is dead, Your Highness. You can now install your own people. I doubt the governor would refuse such a simple request. In the secret chamber of the Ju residence, there are various beauties imprisoned by Jumo. Among them is one named Zhong Wen, who could be of great use. He would have met Xiaoji at the Ju residence and later become his right-hand man. This is also the reason why a sense of trepidation about returning welled up in my heart. It was something I hadn't even felt when I was first recognized and brought back to the minister's residence. Whether it was guilt or familial affection, nothing matters. In my previous life, they ultimately spared my life. I should repay them. When I arrived, my father, brother, and Shun Hanju were all standing at the main gate. When Shun Hanju looked at me, a flicker of surprise and doubt flashed in his eyes. You are. No wonder he was so shocked. After all, just 2 months ago, he had seen me in this very attire. I took a deep breath and, under everyone's gaze, removed my veil. Xiaoji has been very busy lately, not only with official duties, but also with being angry. I asked considerately, Your Highness, why are you so angry? He snorted coldly and threw the memorial in his hand onto the table. Over the years, he had grown much taller, and his features had taken on a more serious cast. When he wasn't smiling, he did carry a certain air of authority. I heard that after Shun Hanju saw you that day, he fell seriously ill. Now, the moment he wakes up, he writes a memorial begging me to grant him permission to marry you. I raised an eyebrow in surprise. So it was about this matter. Oh, did His Highness agree? Xiaoji looked at me as if I were a fool, and for some reason, his expression darkened even more. In terms of closeness and distance, Minister Jiang is certainly the closer one, naturally. I must consult you before making a decision, otherwise, wouldn't it be like mismatching a couple? I rarely see him in such a sarcastic mood, and I couldn't resist the urge to tease him a bit. After all, this is a major life decision. I must discuss it with Brother Shun before making up my mind. I happen to have an appointment with him today, so I'll take my leave now. Xiaoji was taken aback, his eyes wide with surprise. I can't believe I just accepted it so calmly, and then left in such a hurry. But today, I wasn't going to see Shun Hanju, but rather Jiang Chan. Last time when I delivered the imperial decree to the Jiang residence, I only had a brief meeting with them. The courtyard I had burned down had been rebuilt, and the furnishings and decorations inside were exactly the same as before I left. Only the small wooden carving of a wild goose on the head of the bed, clearly carved by an amateur, showed a rough and unrefined quality in every detail. Both my father and brother had reddened eyes, as if they had much to say, yet I did not know what to say, just said we'd meet another day, definitely next time. But then yesterday, I received Jiang Chan's message. This time, she really intends to travel the world. Are you? I'm sorry. Jiang Chan lowered her head, her eyelashes trembling slightly. I don't know why she was apologizing to me. Actually, on the day you burned yourself to death, I felt somewhat relieved. My eyebrows twitched, and I almost thought I was hearing things. At that time, I thought, if you died, Brother Hanju would marry me. But it was only then that I realized Brother Hanju liked you. Even without you, he wouldn't have married me. I think I somewhat understand what you meant when you said you hated me that day. This is exactly how it feels. After saying this, she forced a relieved smile. But it looked uglier than crying. The room fell silent for a moment. At this instant, she seemed like a prisoner awaiting my judgment. I never imagined Jiang Chan would have such thoughts. My body seemed to laugh uncontrollably, and the maid in the room thought I was about to go mad again. The one who truly let go, in fact, was me. Finally, I've caught you. I knew it. How could you really be as good and pure as they say?
so flawless. Upon hearing this, Jiang Chan's face flushed bright red. And she wiped her hands nervously over her cheeks, as if one more word from me would make her so ashamed she'd want to run into a wall. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I was truly awful. What can I do to earn your forgiveness? Me, as expected, there's nothing worthwhile to say to someone like this. I took out a Yenzi jade token and tossed it into her arms. Jiang Chan looked at me in a daze. Didn't you say you wanted to travel the world? Do you think you can journey across the land with just those useless maids and a few guards? I've assigned some people to protect you in secret. Keep this token safe, they'll come to your aid if anything happens. Jiang Chan stared at the jade token, her eyes sparkling, and leaped up to hug me. Are you? Thank you for sending people to protect me. You're so good to me. The scent of magnolia blossoms drifted from her hair, lingering at the tip of my nose, refusing to fade for a long time. I pushed her away disdainfully and let out a cold laugh. I'm just afraid something might happen to you. In the end, I'd still be the one who has to go looking for you. This time, I think I've truly admitted defeat. Words should not be spoken carelessly. I finally managed to come up with a bunch of excuses to get away from my father and older brother. As soon as I stepped out, I ran right into Shinhanju. He was dressed lightly, and perhaps because he had been ill for some time. His face looked somewhat pale, her dark hair was loosely tied up with a green jade hairpin, a few strands falling loosely by her neck, clearly indicating she had rushed here in a hurry. It was obvious for whom she had come. I looked up at the light snow falling from the sky and kindly reminded her, I heard that Lord Shun has just recovered from a serious illness. It would be best to take care of your health. Shinhanju forced a smile. Thank you for your concern, sister. Are you? I nodded slightly and prepared to leave, but Shinhanju called out to me, are you? If in this lifetime, I were the first to remember everything, would the outcome between us be different? I paused slightly, feeling something in my chest gradually collapsing, but a weight lifted off my shoulders. Shinhanju was once a moon that shone upon me. Unfortunately, he was a full moon. There is no room for me to intervene. I turned back to look at him. Shinhanju, aren't we already different now? In this lifetime, we did not become a resentful couple, tormenting each other. The people we care about have not died. Snow fell on his long eyelashes, melted by his body heat, and slowly slid down. Yes, his expression remained unchanged, a smile curling at the corner of his lips, revealing no emotion. Shinhanju thought, she loved the clear moonlight shining upon her, but perhaps he never loved the moon. When I returned to the palace, I saw Xiaoji pacing in the study. As soon as he caught sight of me out of the corner of his eye, he immediately sat down and pretended to be reading a book, completely unaware that he was holding it upside down. Then, as if bringing it up casually, how did the talk go? I nodded and replied, pretty well, everything was made clear. Xiaoji abruptly stood up, looking at me in disbelief. You all, have really agreed? I nodded. Haven't we agreed already? Shinhanju has memories from his past life. There's no need for further words between him and me. Even if I did nothing in this lifetime, the fact remains that Jiang Chan and hundreds of lives once stood between him and me. Perhaps it's for the best. Saving a lot of unnecessary talk, Xiaoji walked up to me, trying to find even the slightest hint of teasing on my face, but there was none. He lowered his voice. What about me? What am I to you? I forced down the urge to let my smile take flight, turning my back to avoid looking at him. Consider it my pity for you. Behind me, all sound instantly vanished. I'm a bit worried. Did I really make him cry? I'm sure Mema Wen will scold me again for bullying him, but before I could turn around, a warm body pressed against me. On the palace bricks, two shadows overlapped, as if entwined yet also as if caressing. Then why can't you pity me for a lifetime? At the beginning of my rebirth, I had also thought, why not just be a proper lady like Jiang Chan and be a good person? With my memories of the past life, I could surely avoid all the misfortunes of the previous one, but I didn't. I chose another path. Perhaps I already knew the answer back then. Extra one. Xiaoji has been in a good mood lately, except for the occasional need to see Shinhanju. Yet this person always seems to gravitate toward him. Of course, he wasn't approaching Xiaoji, he was approaching Jiang Yangyu. This, in turn, left Xiaoji somewhat displeased, but he couldn't show it too obviously. Or wouldn't that make him seem petty and narrow-minded? Although Xiaoji thought that as long as Jiang Yangyu had eyes, she wouldn't take a liking to Shinhanju. Just in terms of looks alone, he was far superior. Moreover, Shinhanju seemed to have once wavered between the sisters, causing a rift between them. Such a man is even less worthy of trust. But then again, after all, he was someone she had liked in her youth, so his place in her heart was somewhat different from others. Otherwise, Why would she even call out his name in her dreams? Yet Shen Hanju was a man of considerable talent, and his conduct was impeccable. There was simply no fault to be found, no excuse for confrontation. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but fall into a fit for days on end. Thus, this pot of old vinegar would inevitably be stirred up from time to time. Finally, one day Jiang Yang could bear it no longer. She hurled a jade pillow at him. If you mention Shen Hanju again, you can just go be with him. Xiao Zhiji had upset her and quickly went to comfort her, but as he comforted her, he ended up feeling wronged himself. When you were in your fiefdom, whenever you were in a bad mood, you'd drink yourself into a stupor, then just stare at me blankly and call out Shen Hanzhou's name. And that day at the inn, you said you would tell me, but as soon as you came back, you went to find him, and you even called him brother. All the women I love cast me aside like worn-out shoes. What's the point of sitting on this throne I've schemed so hard to obtain? Jiang Yangyu initially frowned, but the more she listened, the more amused she became. Who said I cast you aside like a worn-out shoe, or do you have other women you fancy? Xiao Zhi dared not say another word. He knew all too well Jiang Yenyue's skill in turning the tables. A few more words, and he didn't know how many charges would be pinned on him. He thought he wouldn't get an answer again today, but unexpectedly, Jiang Yangyu turned over and pinned him down, sealed with a kiss. Would you like to know? I can tell you slowly. Extra 2. Xiao Zhi had a nightmare. In the dream, his fate was not so good. He did not meet Jiang Yangyu. So this journey was very difficult for him. No one could protect him. After ascending the throne, he personally executed his former enemies. Everyone cursed him for his tyranny and incompetence, yet feared for their own heads. He didn't care. He only felt exhilarated. It was only right that everyone feared him. That way, those he cared about wouldn't die. After he had taken his revenge, he didn't know what to do next, so he wandered all day long in the imperial palace. Like a ghost trapped within the 4 walls of the palace, he had seen such people when he was young. They called them the mad concubines of the cold palace. Xiao Zhi felt it didn't matter anymore. He would just live day by day. Perhaps recalling the past, he suddenly heard a familiar song, and his heart stirred slightly. As a child, he was quite mischievous, doted on by his father and mother. Only Nanny Wen could discipline him. Whenever she sang, he knew it was time to go to sleep. It is said that before a person dies, they recall their entire life. Are the black and white impermanents coming to take him away? Following the tune of that Jiangnan folk song, he didn't find the black and white impermanents, but instead found a woman. Her face was slack, her eyes dull. But it wasn't hard to see that she had been a beauty in her youth. She can sing this song. Xiao Zhi goes to listen to the music every day, and that dirty, cramped palace has become the only place in the palace where he feels comfortable. And when the woman learned his identity, she was neither surprised nor afraid. Only then did he realize that they were the same kind of people. Let's just live until we can't. TSK TSK TSK, how wicked. It's a long story. Her smile suddenly flashed into his mind again. He asked her how she had learned this tune. The woman lowered her head, and a faint smile appeared on her usually expressionless face. It was someone who was very kind to me when I was a maid in the past who taught me to sing it. Did she regret it too? If she were just a little maid, she might have been happier. Xiao Zhi despised those with malicious hearts the most, but suddenly, he felt that she was actually quite pitiful. His health was deteriorating day by day, and he no longer had the strength to run halfway across the palace to listen to her sing, so he transferred her to his side. If I were to die suddenly, at least someone would know, right? But he never expected that she would leave before him. Indeed, he had never been able to protect anything. He slowly walked forward and carefully wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth. Then, she closed her still warm eyes. If there is a next life, may I be a swan goose soaring between heaven and earth. The end.